Magnolia, you there? You there?
Hmm.
So what are your thoughts on what you heard? In that audio. Do you agree or disagree with anything? Do you agree with everything? Do you disagree with everything? Especially as a woman, like how do you feel?
Okay, so one I could speak on it coming because I was in an abusive relationship. My ex, not physical, but everything else, though. And then I agree and also disagree in some sense. When it comes down to the situation, what I always like to say is that if you're not working towards trying to leave, then I would say it's not justified, right? And when I say working towards trying to leave is because I can understand a girl that doesn't just get up and walk out, depending on the situation, especially if you don't know that what's happening is abuse, right? Because if we're talking about the emotional and the verbal abuse, especially what I went through initially, I didn't even know that it was abuse, right? So,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm sorry. I have to do this.
oh my God.
When you say, especially if they don't know it's an abuse,
Mm-hmm.
in 2023, would I be wrong in saying that I think that like supposed to be grown people, both men and women, know if they're in a relationship with someone, know that they should not be putting their hands on each other. Would I be wrong in saying that?
Oh, well, I'm talking about in the emotional and mental one, not the
Okay.
physical one. Because the emotional and the mental one, I'm talking about coming from like if your significant other's a narcissist, if you've never been taught how relationships should be, stuff like that. It's very hard to even know if you're actually being abused because the narcissist can make you feel like you're the one doing the abuse. And I can speak with this from having a narcissist mother and then a narcissist ex, right? And I'm not, what I'm saying is that there's never a can't, right? There's always a way out. There's always somehow you can find and work to leave. That's why I disagree with the whole you can't leave, right? I can understand that it's hard, that you might not be able to leave right away. But when it comes down to the can't, and I'm going to stay in this, that's where I disagree. So for me, it was like what I at least enable for me to know that I'm gonna leave and not come back. What I had to do is I had to work on legit loving myself and being comfortable with the fact that I was gonna be alone, right? So it's making those steps in the relationship to get ready to leave the relationship. That is what I had to do. Like I had to disattach myself from the relationship before breaking up with him to know that I wasn't going to go back, to know that I was going to do this, I was going to be comfortable being single. I don't care. And it's for me it's like if you're not willing to do anything to lead to that would help you leave that relationship, that's when I say that those are excuses. Um I understand when people are like, "Oh, I have kids," stuff like that, or "Oh, I don't have any money." Well, what you can do then is you can get a side job. You could start saving up. You could start doing things to help you leave. That's where I'd have to say when it comes to the whole domestic violence situation. I understand that it's like you can't just be like, okay, just get up and walk away. I understand that a lot of people think that way, and because I come from a side of empathetic, I give the leeway of start doing things that you know are going to help you at least leave him. Start loving yourself because once you love yourself, you're not going to stand for the way that he's treating you. And that's what my problem was in my last relationship. I didn't care about myself. And when I started to teach myself to love myself, I started to notice, hey, this isn't okay. Oh, hey, like this, I started to see the BS, right? So I will say it is hard to leave. I will always, always agree with people when they say that it's hard to leave, but it's not impossible. And if you take steps to get yourself to want to leave, you will eventually leave.
So if a woman, and you have my empathy for what you went through.
I
But
wasn't trying.
the
I was just using
topic,
it
the
as an
topic is
example.
domestic violence. The topic is not like emotional abuse. So you're telling me that if a woman has a man that is being physically abusive and physically violent with her, that she should still continue to keep herself situated with that man for a certain period of time, and keep subjecting herself, to that physical violence until only Lord knows when. It's too late
Okay,
or
well, I thought that you were talking about all domestic violence because I mean, it's not just one, but if we're talking about the physical part, me personally, I can't even. He never hit. I mean, if he would have hit me, I would have been in jail. But um, yeah, for those types of situations, I say, yeah, you need to leave because he's gonna end up killing you. I mean, unaliving you. He's gonna end up unaliving you. I always like it, from my friends that went through that. I'm like, he's going to unalive you. Like, no, you should not stay. When it comes to something like that, like I will say that for with that, I can't understand that because I wouldn't feel comfortable being next to somebody that's going to physically hit me. Like, and I think that I'm going to be unalived. So I would say for that situation, I would still try to look at what else is going on, why they would want to stay, like, try to find some way to help them because I try not to be like, it's your fault, you're staying, blah blah blah. I try to see like what is making them stay, right? And then whatever's making them stay, that's what I try to help them with and try to, I guess, target. And then usually that's when they end up leaving is when they realize like what's actually making them stay. I don't know. I'm more sensitive to something like this. I understand why people are blunt about it. And I will also say that I don't invalidate that for the people that, oh, you should just leave. I don't invalidate that either because I understand, but I do come from more of a sympathetic place of if that makes sense, Noble.
okay, is cheating a deal breaker for you?
For me, yes. So is hitting me.
Okay, so why? Because I know cheating to be a deal breaker for a lot of women. I know I've heard a lot of women say that if a man cheated on them, they would
Yeah.
instantly be done with them and end the relationship. They'll end the
Mhm.
marriage, do all of that. But you hear a lot of women talk about how they've put up with abuse for years upon end, whether it was physical abuse, whether it was emotional abuse. So I'm trying to understand why like cheating is such a big deal breaker, but women will put up with abuse for years upon end. Why do you think that is?
Well, when I was to well, when it comes to the physical one, yeah, I don't understand that. But when I was talking to you
I don't
about the
understand the
emotional one,
emotional one either.
well, it's
If
because
you feel a
well, like
man
I
is being
said,
emotionally abusive to you, why are you staying
it's
in that
because you
relationship?
don't
Why
know.
wouldn't
Well,
you
it's
just
because
end
like
it?
depending on the intensity of it and depending when it happens, because you have to understand when it comes to emotional abuse, I personally believe that emotional abuse is harder to leave than physical abuse because emotional abuse, there's times where you don't even know that it's happening. Like these people could act a certain way for 2 years and you think everything's good, and then it'll start switching up, and then the narcissist, and then the gaslighting, and all of those things. Where I'm not trying to make excuses, but I'm trying to have you guys understand why this person may not even think that it's emotional abuse at first because they think they're the problem because that person legit makes them believe that they're the problem. And so if the girl thinks that she's the problem, she's not going to think that that's emotional abuse.
So
That's what
how
narcissists
long
do.
was it until you realized that you weren't the problem?
I would have to say it took me about like 2 months. 2 months. 2 months. And then I started to see like certain things were not making any sense. I started to see my other people's relationships and then I started to ask questions. And when I started to ask questions, and I started to see, okay, this isn't even okay. Because, like, yeah, in my other, like, that's where it's like, I would say that I have empathy because I know what it feels like to not know that you're even being manipulated. But after you realize you're being manipulated, that's when I said I took steps to make sure that I was going to leave. But what I'm talking about is for the people that don't even know that it's even that bad of abuse, especially when it comes from emotional. And I have to be honest with you, Noble, like before I was even in that relationship, I had the same mindset. Like, why would they do that? Why would this? And honestly, I don't think it's someone, when it comes to emotional abuse and dealing with narcissists, it's not something you could really understand unless you really are with one. Like, the way that like they actually go about it, you wouldn't even think that they're the problem. And that's why a lot of people need a lot of therapy for emotional abuse and emotional things like that. Like, because it actually, like, it shifts your thinking. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I'm not trying to make excuses because eventually you realize it's abuse. Eventually you're going to realize it's abuse, right? The little fakeness that they do could only last so long before you realize something's not right. But I'm just speaking for the women that do go through that, especially initially. I believe that at least a lot of the people that deal with narcissists can always at least agree at first they did not think that they were abusive.
Okay.
And that's and I'm being honest, that's just the truth. Now when it comes to physical and stuff like that, I don't know about that. Me personally, I wouldn't let anyone hit me. That's one of my deal breakers. I don't the whole thing about the my last relationship, that was my like first relationship. Like I said, I wasn't experienced in anything to where there were factors to where I was more vulnerable and easy. I guess you could say more gullible to where the things that I know now, obviously, I'm not gonna let that happen again. Um, but I wouldn't be surprised if one girl, if every girl at least had one abusive emotional relationship, especially when you're new to being in relationships. It's bound to happen.
Okay. Thank you, Mate. No, you can go ahead and mute up.